Hey friends, welcome back to the Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. I am your host, Jami Belmay, and today we are rounding out kind of our 3-part series on homeschooling. I know there's a lot of podcast listeners who don't homeschool, so this will be the last of our homeschool chats for now. But last week I shared our curriculum picks for next year, which was a really fun discussion. I personally love getting to see what other people pick for curriculum. It just can create so many great ideas. And sometimes you hit a point in the year or with a certain child where you're thinking, what I'm using now is not working. And so I just love getting to see what other people use. I think it can be really helpful, even if you end up using very different things. So if you didn't listen to that yet, go back and listen to last week's episode. And on Instagram this last week, I shared those curriculum picks on Instagram as well, although it was a much fuller discussion on the podcast. So if you missed that, go listen. And with it, I had so many questions about routines, fitting subjects in. How do you balance? Because we are entering kind of this middle season now where we do have little kids. We have a almost 4-year-old, almost 2-year-old, newborn come in. And then we have the 5 older kids, the oldest being 6th grade. The twins are in 6th grade. They're heading into middle school this year, which is crazy. And so we're in that period right now of transitioning to bigger kid school, more serious subjects with littles underfoot and juggling the different ages. And every new season, every new year can bring unique challenges. And so I got a lot of questions around routines and fitting things in and just my experience with how do you keep littles busy? How do you train kids to work on individual subjects? So I am going to do a Q&A today. These are all questions I got on Instagram that we're going to chat about. All right, so we will dive in. You will hear from our sponsors for today's episode in a little while, which are Air Doctor and Factor. Okay, so really quick announcements before we dive in. So for those of you guys who have been living under a rock and haven't heard the amazing announcement, we've been working on a new secret project for the last several months. It is finally here. It's not even a month old. It has been a long month. It is called the Joyful Home app. It is our brand new app, a real actual app. You can also access the full thing on the website, just if you want to use a web browser or on your computer. It's fully accessible and is amazing. It's the web portion is great, but obviously having it as an app is really, really great too. You can download things for offline, all that kind of goodness. And there's really great features. You can save things to your library. I mean, so many incredible features. Like, you got to get in and check this thing out. But basically what it is it's taking the very best of everything we have ever done online since 2014 and beyond and before. So over a decade now of online conferences, of courses, of videos, of ebooks, of audiobooks, and putting everything into one app that you can access for $12.99 a month. We do have a special coupon code going on right now for 20% off. So if you go to joyfulhomeapp.com, you can check that out and get 20% off every single month when you use that coupon code. Like, you use it once and then it applies, right? So it is just amazing. So the new announcements for it is that we just published, just yesterday, we published our a new little video series that Jason and I are doing. It's exclusive to the app, and it's our book reviews. So they're about 5-minute long each one. I did 5 and Jason did 5. So we have 10 video reviews right now of books, and we're going to continue to add to those. So that's really fun. If you're looking for new things to read, you want to kind of know, is this book worth it? I'm limited on time. It's sharing all of our favorite books we say that we don't love and we would avoid, things like that. So you can check that out. We also have the audiobook for Anne of Green Gables, which is going to be coming out in the next week or two. Jason's just in his final editing process of getting that all done. He is also in the middle of recording Winnie the Pooh Volume 2. So Volume 1's already on there and has been an absolute fan favorite in the app. And all kinds of new courses. We have the 2024 Finding Joy in Your Home online conference will be in May. We've got the theme for that releasing soon, the dates, all of the information coming in the next week or so. And that is going to be fully 100% hosted on the app. You will not have to buy a separate ticket. All you need is access to the app, which you could just sign up for 1 month if you wanted to, and get to join that, which is going to be amazing. So We just have, I mean, I could talk forever on all of the things that are currently being uploaded into the app, all the new things that are coming. But if you head over to joyfulhomeapp.com, you can check it all out, get that coupon code for 20% off. And that applies to the monthly as well as the annual plans, which is really cool. All right, so let's pull up our questions here. We're just going to kind of be all over the place, but we're going to hit on a lot of topics. So the first question is, how do you handle morning time with toddlers and babies? I got the more formal time down, but I also want my littles to be part of Bible and other readings, but they are quite disruptive. Okay, so let's do a little caveat. First of all, right here at the beginning, we all know that different families with different unique needs, with different children, with different husbands, with different personalities, we are going to run our homeschool in different ways. I do not think that there is one right way to homeschool, to run your morning, to figure out solutions. I also think that this sort of answer that I'm going to give, some encouragement for you, this absolutely can change from month to month, from season to season. Your baby's currently teething. It could make a difference. Your baby's going through a 9-month sleep regression. That can make a difference. There are so many factors, as well as the ages of your older children. It can just change so many different things. So what I want to encourage you with this and a lot of things we're going to talk about today is hear experience from other homeschool moms, because the encouragement I give, the advice I give has been what has worked well for me. And a different mom with different kids, a different family could give complete opposite advice. And that is what has worked for her. So I want to encourage you, listen to other homeschool moms, see what people have used, what's been working, and try some things out. I've tried some things that I thought, oh, that is the most brilliant idea I've ever heard. I'm going to try it. And it just didn't work for us. So you have to figure out what is going to work well for your family in this season. And a huge part of that is also dependent on your children's ages. Okay. So I have two thoughts here. So so for our morning time, we do like morning basket where we do extra reading. We'll do like Shakespeare and poetry, and we do like art history. Now we move through really fast. We're not doing hours or anything like that. But I love the idea of having, your babies and your toddlers incorporated into this. But I also want to encourage you to not expect too much. We want to expect a lot, but we also don't want to expect too much. Yes, babies and toddlers can be trained to sit. They can listen. They can soak the stuff in. That's great. But there's also times where we're doing school all day long. The littles can go off and play. And that's also completely fine. And sometimes you take it morning by morning. And if your 3-year-old's not sitting and listening to all of morning time, I think it's okay. Like it's let them go play. There's plenty of time for them to sit down in the more formal stuff. Now, start with training. Start with saying, we're going to sit here for 5 minutes and you're going to sit quietly. You're going to sit on this blanket. Here's a couple blocks to play with, and we're going to listen for 5 minutes and stretch it to 10 minutes until you kind of hit that natural, a block. You're not going to have a 3-year-old who's extremely physical and extremely all over the place. You're not going to get him to sit for 2.5 hours to listen to readings all morning. Nor should you expect that. Some toddlers are more naturally calm. They'll sit in color while they listen. And some kids are just going to naturally do that a lot easier than others. So for yours that are struggling, have an appropriate expectation for how they can sit, and they can absolutely be trained to sit and listen more quietly. But also have an appropriate expectation. If you're really wanting an hour of Bible study, he may or may not be able to really kind of sit to your expectations. The other thing is that you're going to be training, and you're going to constantly be training. So I think this is the same exact thing when people expect too much out of family worship time. So I shared a video on Instagram this week of our morning reading, and the 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, was sitting on the ground playing with blocks. And then the baby was in my lap. the baby, the 18-month-old, was in my lap drinking his bottle. And in this video, I showed that I had to correct the 3-year-old a couple of times and say, Maverick, we're doing reading right now. You need to be quiet. And then I think I had to correct him twice in the video. And then the baby was actually sitting there pretty quiet, but he started getting like moving his arm and, getting in the way. And so like I moved him in front of me and had the book behind. And then in the video, you see his head like on the book. Like that is what happens. And I had 50 people respond and say, thank you so much for showing this. I felt like I was doing something wrong, that like my 18-month-old is not sitting more quietly. And actually, as far as my opinion goes, that was a pretty successful morning time. It wasn't chaos. I just had to stop a couple of times. I had to correct, remind the 3-year-old we're reading right now. It is not talking time, because he'll want to go talk to everybody and play with everybody. But he can sit and play as long as he's doing it quietly. And then the 18-month-old is squirmy and on my seat, and I had to adjust and, redo. And it was totally successful morning time, but it wasn't perfect and quiet and completely still. And the amount of people who were like, oh, I needed to see that. I think we assume that everybody else's babies and toddlers are just sitting there completely quietly, hands on the lap, listening. And it's not true. There's some babies and toddlers who absolutely have the discipline. There's absolutely things we can do to help train that, but we also have to have an accurate expectation for what it's going to look like. Now, if your 3-year-old is screaming through the house and being very, very, very disruptive when you have said, we need to be quiet right now, that's where discipline needs to step in. And you have a discipline issue at that point, which we've had, and that's what you have to deal with. And, so for a lot of our morning time, the little two may start out near us and listening, and then the 3-year-old will kind of wander off and get some water. And then I see him wander down the next hallway, and he's got like blocks in his hand, and he's kind of like, he's building things, he's doing things, but the expectation still is that he needs to be quiet. So if he wants to play with a toy that's louder, it has to be in his bedroom, and he can go do that. But he knows that the expectation still is, when he's kind of walking around doing his thing, that it is a quieter playtime. And I need to remember too that my constant job is also training that and discipling that. It's not a one and done that you teach them one day and then they're going to be quiet. This applies all the time. And the same thing with family worship. When we're doing family worship, the 3-year-old is now expected to participate in family worship and to sit on the couch and to listen along. But there's also grace given that he is wigglier and that he's going to move around some more. And as long as he's participating, then that is what we're training. And there's many times where Jason has to stop and say, hey, Maverick, remember, this is what we're doing right now, and to correct. And there's times for discipline as well. So I want to encourage you in that it's not going to be perfect. You can start to train it. And I also think there's times, especially with morning basket, with family worship, we really want him trained to be sitting there, to be participating. But when I have 5 other children I'm homeschooling, my focus is not always on the 3-year-old. At that moment, he's okay to go play because we're going to be doing school all day. So finding things for him to play with is also good too. So kind of depends on your priorities as well. All right. Here's a question I got. I got this question in many variations. This was the most popular question. I think a lot of people are struggling with this. So this person asked, I would love to see how daily routines fit in around homeschool, cleaning, cooking meals, etc. Okay, so this is a really great question. Now, I'm going to share my routine. It's really helpful, I think, to see this. But one of the limitations with the fact that we're a homeschool family is that we are home all the time. And there is obviously a very much a different sort of busyness. Packing lunches for your kids, getting your kids out of the house by 7 a.m., school drop off. I mean, there's an absolute different sort of busyness that comes from that. But having your family home all day long, every day, eating all the meals at home, getting everything constantly dirty, there is a different sort of work. And it's a hard work. Like you're getting the house messy constantly. And so I do want to encourage you that even the moms I know who are the most absolute type A, amazing women at cleaning and schedules and staying on top of stuff, their house is messier during school hours. Like it just is the case, especially when you have little ones running around, messing things up. People are always like, what does your 3-year-old do while you do homeschool? And I'm like, he destroys the house. He gets into books and he's looking at them and he's playing with them and he gets blocks out and then he's getting Legos out. It just happens. And so let's make sure that we are, again, having accurate expectations. But if you are more like me, my personality, unfortunately, I'm the opposite. I wish I was more type A. I'm more the let's ditch all chores and go do a craft. That's more my bent. So I've really had to work at this. I've had to work on organization, figure out how to do this well. And the more children you have, the more mess there's going to be. But it's also the more helpers you have. Okay, so I was reading this book. Do I have it anywhere? I don't know what it's called. It's like a super old book on like cleaning routines. It's from like the 90s or something. And it's a homeschool mom talking about getting, cleaning and organizing routines. And she's talking about a chapter on chores. I don't remember anything else about it if there was any other takeaways. The takeaway I had, though, was she said homeschool moms get really burnt out most of the time because we are trying to do it all. We are trying to keep the house running and the cleaning done on our own. Now, there's certain seasons. I had 5 children, 4 and under. The cleaning was on me because the 18-month-old twins who were, we called them the twin-nados because they were twin tornadoes of destruction at 18 months old. They were not helping. They were just making messes. The brunt of the work was on me, for sure. But even the 4-year-olds at the time, you can teach 4-year-olds how to unload a dishwasher. You can teach them how to help wipe down the bathroom, the kitchen. Absolutely can do pickup. 4-year-olds can start to help. But in that season, it also feels hard because you're like, I don't have extra time to train. That's how I felt. Like it was obviously so much easier just to do it myself. But the training pays off. And even if you didn't train them when they were younger, the 9-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 14-year-old are absolutely capable of taking on household chores. And I think so many of us have had this scared reaction of not wanting to, give our kids too much responsibility when they're too young or overwork them or what have you, that we have as a generation or two gone to the other side of not giving our kids any responsibilities and any chores. And so in a household family during the day, I am not doing the vast majority of the cleaning myself because I am teaching and I am taking care of babies, and the kids are absolutely 100% capable of doing things like making their own lunch, of unloading and loading the dishwasher, of helping the household run smoothly. And I'm not talking that they're doing chores 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. all day long and doing solid work, but it really only takes 10 minutes to unload a dishwasher. So what we do is we do little pockets of chores throughout the day. And it's what really helps keep the household running. And in the last 3 or 4 years, we've gotten really serious about passing out chores, training the kids on chores. We kind of set up chores several years ago, I guess, with the olders. And we're like, okay, you know how to unload the dishwasher and you know how to do this. But you also have to keep constantly training. And for a while, I was feeling kind of frustrated because kids would be assigned like doing sweeping. And then I turn around and I'm like, why is it this whole corner is full of dirt? Like, what is this? So you realize you got to go back and say, hey, buddy, come here. I'm going to remind you again, this is how you need to go along all the corners, retrain them. Because kids also know if no one's checking on what I'm doing, they learn to just do, a not great job. So that's one lesson I've learned for sure is make sure that you're going back, you're training, you're retraining, making sure that you're like, hey, bud, thanks for loading the dishwasher. But there's only like 3 things on the top. Let's rearrange this and let me show you how you could do this better. And yes, that does take work and effort, but in the long run, it absolutely pays off. So here's what it looks like for us. And if you are mamas, if you're like, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, I do want to encourage you. This is a short season. It is such a short season when you have only littles. And I know it doesn't feel like it. Feels like you're going to be in it forever and always. And all of a sudden, your 5-year-old's a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. And that 7-year-old can do a lot of things and a lot more things independently than you probably think they can. And that season's just around the corner. I remember having just gone through it and watching my sister-in-laws in that season where 100% of everything was on them. And I said, I was looking at my one sister-in-law and her kids were starting to get dressed on their own and do some things. And I said, it is right around the corner for you. It is right around the corner where all of a sudden it's going to feel a little easier. And it was like within like 6 months, 8 months, something like that her oldest was able to start doing a few more little things. And it's coming. It's coming. Okay. I want to give you that encouragement. Okay. So this is just kind of our loose routine. This is what we typically do. My absolute number one goal when going to bed at night is to go to bed with the kitchen completely 100% clean, put away. It does not always happen. We have a busy schedule. There's times where you're out late and it doesn't always happen, but then our next day is always harder. So my goal is to 100% get the kitchen clean at night before bed so that the next day we're walking into a clean slate. Now, ideally, the whole front area would be all picked up. Like goal would be we go to bed, everything's picked up, everything's swept, all the kitchen's all done, and we hit that probably a good 90% of the time. Sometimes it's just so busy that we're not getting to that and it makes it harder. And those harder days make me even more push in the evening to make sure that we get it all cleaned up. So we start with a clean slate. We eat breakfast and we start our morning basket time first thing in the morning by like 8 a.m. is usually our goal. The 4 older boys have usually all completed their math by that point, or they're pretty close to being done. So their math is not really something we work into the later schedule. If they haven't finished their math by the time we start school together, they finish it on their own in the afternoons, which of course they will come to me if they have specific questions, things like that. So that's what we do. We eat breakfast and breakfast just stays on the counter. If I have gotten up early enough and we made breakfast before 8, which happens sometimes, and everything, then I'll just go ahead and load the dishwasher real fast, or I'll maybe do a little bit, but often that just kind of sits then. It's going to sit there and we start our morning basket time. Usually it depends on how attitudes are going. Sometimes we'll just do our specific morning basket. Sometimes we'll do our morning basket and all of our together subjects. Really just depends on how everyone's doing. Then we'll take like a 10 to 15 minute break. Sometimes it's half an hour. Like some days, you just you roll with the punches, and everybody does a quick cleanup. So we will take that opportunity mid-morning to everybody's assigned just like a really quick chore, like pick up the toys, go make your beds if you didn't already, like just quick, like everybody, we're going to do a 5-minute like pickup. I will usually refill my coffee, get the little kids a snack if they need something, get Maverick some coloring sheets out if he wants them, load the dishwasher real fast, just turn over the laundry. Like this is our little quick break where I'm like, okay, what needs to be done real fast? Then and then the kids often will, once they're done with their 5-minute chore, they'll go play out on the trampoline for a few minutes, like nice little energy break. And then we do the rest of our together subjects. And then we will start on individual subjects. Like as soon as together subjects are done, which our together subjects are history, science, our other units that we do, read alouds, anything that we're doing together as a group, those all get done first thing because otherwise they will not happen. And then people will start on individual subjects. So we do all of this until noon. Noon is when we stop for lunch. Ish. Sometimes it's 11:30, sometimes it's 12:30. Noon, I put the baby down at that point, and that is when the kids all will start on individual subjects. They'll have their individual reading, and we're doing lunch kind of in there. So lunch is not super formal for us. We only do super, super, super easy lunches. So I'm not cooking during school hours. I'm very, very focused because I am juggling a lot now with school. It's very hands-on for me. When the kids were all younger, it was way more flexible because we weren't doing nearly as much. So while kindergarten can be really hands-on, it's also very simple, maybe an hour and a half a day. And so we had a lot more flexibility of we'd read a little and then maybe I would do some cooking or some cleaning. Our days were more mixed up. Now with school, we know that if it gets past 2, things are not going to get done. So I'm really, I really protect those hours in the morning. These are our homeschool hours, and I'm not, those are set aside for school, just as if I was walking into a school to teach. Those are the hours that I'm supposed to be there. And so that is when we do our school, which has been a huge blessing because it makes it very consistent for us. So for lunch, it's always easy stuff. So it's either heating up leftovers, heating up Mexican, or we had lasagna, or, whatever, making quick sandwiches, doing snacky lunch. And so I would say 99% of the time, the kids just make their own lunch. So I can say, I'll get the lasagna out and say, here, heat up lasagna. I'll either make the littles, or one of the olders will, while I'm in there, I'll be like, hey, can you, while you're making your plate, can you make a plate for Maverick? Or I'll quickly make it while I make my lunch. But everybody's just kind of making lunch and like getting things done. So this is usually about a half an hour or so. Like I said, we're pretty flexible on just really the needs of the day. So baby gets put down for a nap. 18-month-old gets put down for a nap at that point. And the 3-year-old he's eating lunch. He's playing. He'll sometimes if someone's done with a certain subject, they'll go play on the trampoline with him. He just kind of bounces around and does stuff. A lot of times he'll sit right next to me. If I'm at the table doing a subject with someone, he'll sit next to me and want to work in a book. Like he's just doing stuff. He's got projects. I pull out specific toys that are only for school. We'll get magnet tiles out. Those are his favorite. And he'll just build for an hour. And, he's just doing things. So after about 12:30, I try to have my hands-on schooling pretty much done by that point. So any of the real hands-on stuff that I am leading, that I am teaching, that I am directly involved in is happening before noon. Afternoon, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I said I would, do that language arts lesson with you. Let's sit down and do that real fast. But mostly then the older kids are transitioning into the rest of their subjects that they do on their own. So if they didn't finish math, if they haven't finished their handwriting, then they will start working on those. They all have assigned readings every single day. So they have to read like 5 pages out of this, a chapter out of this book. They have I think 5 different readings each day. And so they just kind of move through those. And yes, I absolutely have to remind them, hey, Remington, you're playing outside. Does that mean you're done with all your school? Oh, no, you're not? Okay. Pick up your next book and you're going to sit right next to me and you're going to start reading it. There's totally times for that. The second grader is always completely done with her schoolwork by then. She does not have nearly as much as the older boys do. And then they just kind of they finish their things. They've got free time. We have a list on the fridge that's other school activities that they can do. So it's fun stuff mixed with do an art class or do, one of the things on it that the kids love is do an extra chore and then you can make popcorn. They can have snacks otherwise, but there's something about popcorn that almost every day they're like, Mom, what chore can I do? I want to make popcorn. It's become this very fun thing. And so I'm always like, oh, great. Okay, sure. You can do this. Go make some popcorn. I don't know why it's so motivating to them, but it is. But there's stuff on there that gives them some extra ideas. And this is we look at the afternoons as just creative playtime. Finish up your subjects you didn't do, blah, blah, blah. So this leaves my afternoons open then to finishing that load of laundry and cleaning out the pantry or, all those kind of projects that you never end up getting to. And then I'm also bouncing back and forth between somebody does have a question on an individual subject they're doing, or they want to show me their worksheet that they did, or they want to show me their art lesson that they just finished. So it's just kind of a lot of bouncing around, but I'm not sitting there formally teaching or being necessarily 100% involved in all the stuff they're doing. So once that's done, in the afternoon, we do a quick 10-minute pickup before dinner. So everybody's assigned, while I'm cooking, while I'm finishing up dinner, everybody's assigned another quick chore. And usually it's just the routine pickup, the sweep, the stuff that just kind of needs to happen. Someone unload the dishwasher for me, someone reload it, those kind of easy chores. We do dinner, and then everyone is assigned chores after dinner. So then this is a good cleanup. This is when we usually try to just 100% the whole house. If everybody pitches in 15 minutes of actual work, we can pretty much get everything completely cleaned and ready for the next day. So that's kind of how we juggle it and balance it. During school hours, I am doing a couple things here and there, but school is school time. And I found that the more distracted I am trying to jump on the computer and do a quick thing or pay this bill or, anything, it just makes it much harder to get through the school day. So I try not even to be on my phone, hardly at all, except to text Jason. And other than that, I'm doing school, and having that focus time allows us to move through our subjects so much faster and more efficiently than if we were constantly taking breaks here or there. Okay, that was a long That was a long answer. I apologize. Okay, we'll go through these ones a little faster. Okay, a question is keeping bigs on task for individual work while you manage the littles. So it depends on the age. So my 7-year-old right now, she turned 7 in January. She has been working on doing more individual subjects by herself. So I still do her math lesson with her, but I have been having her do it more and more independently. So she will read through the lesson. She will start to work on it. If she has any questions, she asks me. And sometimes when it's a brand new subject, she's like, Mom, I don't know what this is at all. I'll sit and, we'll work through the whole lesson with her. But she's learned more and more that she can pick it up and she can start kind of moving through it on her own. She can then and if I'm dealing with other people, she knows that she can say, Mom, I have a question. And I'll say, yep, hold on. So she'll get her handwriting out and start working on her handwriting while she waits for me to come get to her. And so starting to train them younger than you probably think to be able to start working on some stuff independently, even if it's like, hey, you now know what to do for the next 3 questions, work on those while I'm over here. And then, wait for me. And even with my older boys, you absolutely have to remind them. There's times where you're like, hey, bud, especially with certain squirrely boys, there are times where I have to be like, hey, what are you supposed to be doing right now? Where's your book at? Is your handwriting done? Oh, I think I forgot to do it. Yeah, let's get it out. So making sure we're doing that. But it really is starting to train. And this is something I learned very well from my mother-in-law. So she homeschooled all 7 of her kids K through 12th. She's actually just graduating her 7th kid this year. And one thing is, and having because Jason was homeschooled, so having his experience is really helpful because by 4th grade, he was on his own for all subjects. He did all subjects independently. And I think a lot of people think that a 4th grader is not capable of doing subjects on his own. And he absolutely can. Doesn't mean you have to. We love our together subjects we do. I love doing history with the kids. I'm not a super big fan of just being like, hey, 2nd grader, here's a history book, read it through. And that's all the history instruction you'll ever get. But there's totally times to say, hey, here's your workbook. You're going to work through it. Come to me if you have questions. And we also have our together subjects that we can explore. But one of the hard things is the more kids you have, you realize you can't do every single individual subject with every single kid. And there are certain curriculum that are very much set up that way that the parent is supposed to be involved in every single lesson. So it's one reason why we don't use the good and the beautiful language arts. I think a kid can use it on their own. So if you're using it, and it works for you, that's wonderful. But it was too parent involved for me to sit down and have individual lessons with what will soon be 8 different children. And so at a certain point, transitioning them to working on their own more is a really, really important skill. And it's something that they do need to develop as they're heading into middle school. So it doesn't mean that you have to say, hey, kid, here, you're 100% on your own. I'm available. I'm checking. That's a big one. I'm checking their work. I'm saying, hey, you say you're finished with everything. Can you please bring me your 3 workbooks? I'd like to look through it. And then you look through and say, hey, you know what? I need you to back up and redo that because you went through it too fast. But starting to train them on that. They lose if they're not staying on mission. Like that's where for one of my kids who will dilly-dally the morning away, the biggest consequence for him is realizing that at 2:00, all of his siblings are completely done with school and they're making popcorn and they're outside building a fort on the trampoline and he has to keep working on school. And so that's a really big motivator to say, hey, bud, you're not doing, everybody else is working on their math right now and you're on question 1, staring off into space. You're gonna have to finish it this afternoon or tonight after dinner. Like you're gonna have to finish it at a later date is definitely a big punishment. But there's times where if they need to learn self-discipline. And if they're not age appropriately, we're not talking a 1st grader here, but a 1st grader can learn how to follow directions too. But there's consequences then. There's privileges taken away. There's things that are not pleasant that might need to be instituted. What we also have done that the kids all really appreciate, and I think this does help keep them on task, is I have been printing out a daily sheet for them. And it pretty much, I barely change it from week to week. In fact, when they're all in the same books, I don't even change it for several weeks. I'll just reprint out new ones and it'll say Monday, April 15th or whatever. And it'll have a checklist of every single thing they need to do that day. make your bed in the morning, do your math lesson. And I'll even have check mark. They love being able to check stuff off and see where they're at. I think it really helps them with their flow for the day to know what they have left to do. So I'll even put our together subjects, do our gather round unit, do our history reading. I'll also put their do your big chore. They're all assigned different big chores like clean the bathroom. I will put all of that on there, including their individual readings. And that has really, really helped because I don't tell my older boys that they have to get up at 7 a.m. and start their math. That just started happening naturally because they were really motivated. They hate math. They're good at it, but they hate it. Of course, I know. I get it. I wasn't good at math and I hated math. But they were very motivated. They wanted to get it done. They didn't want it to be 3 o'clock and still working on math. So one of my sons started getting up early and getting his math done before anybody else was awake. And then his twin was like, wait a minute. Start waking me up too, to where all of a sudden it's all 4 boys out at the kitchen table, bleary-eyed and grumpy, working on their math at 7 a.m. because they're really self-motivated because they want to get it done for the day. And I think the checklist really helps because they can see what they can start on. So when I'm busy with someone else or I'm like, hey, so when I'm making breakfast, I do not field any questions. I'm like, no, because it becomes a nightmare. So I'm like, nope, if you have math questions, that's going to have to wait until I'm done with them, with breakfast and work on one of your other things while you wait. So it allows them to have more autonomy over their schoolwork to see what they need to work through. And guess what? If they're really diligent and they work on stuff, they're going to be the first ones done and have the whole afternoon to play. And so that has been really, really motivating. If the kid feels like he's doing school 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. anyway, and it really doesn't matter, then, he's going to procrastinate more because there's no real reward in working hard and getting it done. Okay. Next question. First trimester pregnant with a 5-year-old, trying to be consistent with routine, but how? All right. Here's the thing. I got 2 things for you. First of which may not be very popular. Your 5-year-old is totally okay going without school for a month. I know in certain states you have to have educational activities, but honestly, educational activities can be watch a leapfrog video. Those are so great. Sing your ABCs. Have her write her name 10 times on a paper, depending on where she's at. It's not going to harm her in any way, shape, or form for the 5, 6, 7-year-old to take off a little bit of time from school because you are so sick you can't get anything done. The good news is once they get older, they have more subjects that they can do on their own. So I just went through this. I was first trimester in January. I was extremely sick, one of my worst pregnancies, could barely get off the couch. So I ran school from the couch. And believe you me, if I had a kindergartner at the time, he would have been doing a lot of fun playing for that month. And it would have been completely and utterly fine. Do what you can. Okay. So my older kids, they were able to still more or less run their subjects, but we weren't doing like half of our together subjects. I just didn't have the energy. I couldn't get to it. And that's one of the absolute beauties of homeschool is that we have that flexibility. So don't beat yourself up. Do a little bit. There's going to be days where you feel a little better, get some stuff done. On other days, like go outside, let her play in the sunshine and sit in a chair and watch her and drink some water and, put on a leapfrog video and say, hey, that was some really great school for the day. All right. Okay. What order do you do subjects in? Okay. So I kind of gave you a breakdown. I'm really not strict about it. Sometimes I'm like, okay, let's pick up our language arts or like, it just kind of depends on the flow of the day. But we do our morning basket time absolutely first thing in the morning, unless we have like a doctor's appointment or something we have to get to. I will skip that. Otherwise, we do that first thing in the morning, those extra subjects, because otherwise they 100% will not ever happen. Ever, 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 ever. So I do those first. All right. How long does each section last? Like we read for 30 minutes, etc. Okay. So, I kind of gave you the schedule. So we pretty much between 8 and noon pretty much get, the boys math at 7. Between 8 and noon, we pretty much try to get all of our core subjects done. And then the kids are doing their extra stuff that their workbooks and things that they do on their own till the afternoon. So I'd say most often they're doing kind of all their core till about 2. And that's not all. 8 to 2 is not 100% school time. There will be half an hour where they go play out on the trampoline. We're making lunch, we're cleaning up, we're doing some chores. But by about 2, pretty much everybody is completely done. Some days it's a little bit earlier than that. But I would say each subject, I don't think any single subject we have takes longer than half an hour. I don't think there's anything that takes that long. Our history reading every day is probably 20, 25 minutes. That might be the longest single one because we're doing 2 different history books right now. Sometimes when we're doing read alouds, we will read. We're like, if we're really into a book, we did Lord of the Rings. We're doing Narnia right now. We've done different books where like sometimes they'll listen for longer than half an hour. They'll listen while we're making lunch and eating. And but for the most part, we don't have any single subjects that take longer than half an hour. The boys' math should be done within half an hour, but there are some days where they drag that math out and it takes them way longer than half an hour. But that's kind of on them also. All right. How do you manage all the individual subjects? So we kind of talked about that. All the older kids are on their own for their individual subjects. If you have a large family, it's definitely worth looking into unit studies. There's a lot of things that you can all study as a group: history, science. Even when the kids were younger, we did a lot of language arts all together. But math and language arts tend to be the ones that need to be more individualized per grade level. A lot of other subjects, though, you can all explore together. So we just do American history and everybody learns American history. Then we do ancient and they all learn ancient. They're going to get into high school and they'll have to be more specific on when they're taking certain subjects, which is fine because by then they will be doing it 100% on their own. And so other than that, I am not teaching every single subject for every single child individually. Okay, how to fit in more than core subjects. I do think picking maybe one, we rotate. So for our morning basket time, we do a Shakespeare study, poetry, art history, a composer study. We've done we had this like fun book from Usborne that was like a grammar book, but it was like a funny one. It was a fun read. I don't remember what it was called. But we'll do like those kind of random subjects and those are all rotated. So we don't do all of those every single day. We might do on Monday, we might do art history and Shakespeare, and they're each about 10 to 15 minutes long. And then the next day we might do poetry and composer study. Those are each 10 to 15 minutes long. And so I think first thing in the morning is the only way for me to be able to add in anything that's extra like that, or it will not happen. And don't go overboard. Do a couple of minutes. Try starting slowly, incorporating a few more things. And then the more that your kids learn to work independently, the more that you have the time and the capacity to add in some other fun stuff. But like our kids too, when we do, because the way we do our assigned reading, they're reading, like Magnolia just read this whole book on artists and she loved it. She's like, Mom, I want more like that. My other son's reading this really goofy book on human body, and it's like interesting facts about the human body. So, and my other son is reading a book on birds. So they're reading all kinds of other things. You don't have to have a curriculum that's teaching every single thing that they're ever going to learn. Once they're of the age to be able to read, hand them a book and start assigning readings. So we assign a biography. Every day they have a biography they're reading out of. They're each read 5 pages out of this children's encyclopedia that we have that's really interesting. They each read like a science. They read 5 pages from a science book. So we're kind of rotating the subjects that they're going through. And so there's so much extra that you can assign as reading. And that's one of the huge perks of homeschooling. All right. Do you do a lot of tests and quizzes, or do you just skip them for the younger grades? I do absolutely 0 tests and quizzes. We don't do any. And in fact, none of the curriculum we use other than their math are their tests and quizzes. We don't, or if there are, I just skip them. We don't do any of that for younger grades. Our state doesn't require it. So obviously if your state requires it, we don't do any of those. I personally don't find them useful. However, having Jason and his siblings' experiences, heading into middle school, high school, we will start introducing more quizzes for them because they're going to just need to know how to do them when they go on to college classes or other things like that. They need to know that sometimes there's a timed thing and you need to figure out how to do a quiz here. I don't find quizzes and tests helpful in younger grades. I just don't think that there is a need for it. So in their math that they did, they had like a review at the end of every unit, which I guess you could say was like a test or a quiz. But for like history, things like that, I don't personally find it helpful. Okay, do the younger kids spend less time on schoolwork than the older ones? If so, how long per age? Yes, 100%. So I would say kindergarten, absolute maximum time ever spent doing kindergarten is an hour and a half. Kindergarten does not need to be hard at all. Work on a little bit of math, a little bit of handwriting, little bit of reading. You're really good. Other than that, we just read a lot of books and we, explore, and you don't need a science curriculum. You don't need a history curriculum for that age. And one thing I know parents get really stressed about is like making sure that you're doing enough, and they get really stressed. My kid's going into first grade, and how do I know that I'm hitting everything that they need? One thing for you is think back to your schooling. Okay, let's say second grader is doing biology. You're learning about biology. You're going to take biology again in middle school, right? And it's going to be intro to biology. Then you're going to hit high school. And what are you going to take? You're going to take intro to biology again. And then guess what? You get to college and you got to take biology 101 again, unless you took AP bio. And in which case you're just doing the next part of bio. So here's the thing, you guys. Here's the encouragement for you. Elementary school kids, you don't need to stress that they're learning the right history, the right science, these extra things. They're gonna get it all again. Now, does it mean we're lazy and we do nothing? There's great exploring, there's great learning that kids can do, but don't get so stressed out that they missed a unit of biology. They're not gonna remember it anyway. They're first graders, okay? So I wanna encourage you in that. The second thing to do is, this is highly encouraging. Every single state, and if you live in another country, I'm sure you have standards too. Every state has state standards. Okay. So I did this when my littles were kindergarten, first grade, and I was going, how am I supposed to do science? What do I do? I looked up California's state standards for kindergarten. And you will find sometimes it takes a little bit of work, but you can find like on the State Board of Education. I think it was first grade that I was looking at, because I'm like, what do I need to add in? And the requirements for like what a student's supposed to know by the end of first grade were like laughable. So for like social sciences, for science and like history and everything, it was like your child needs to learn in first grade about, what was it? It was like about your county. So they need to know what a county is, and kind of loosely what a state is, and that they kind of fit together. And it was like, that was it for the year. And I was like, oh, okay, we're stressing out way too much. Like kindergarten, first, second grade, they're learning about their world. They're learning. So take them outside. You don't need a formal science. And if you do, that's totally fine. No guilt. I mean, do what works well for you. But for me, I had twin kindergartners and 3 other toddlers at home. And then I had twin second graders and twin kindergartners. We weren't doing an individual science and an individual this and that. Like, it was too hard. It was too overwhelming. There was no way. But we would go outside and we'd have a picnic and we'd bring our food out on the grass and we'd see bees buzzing by and they would go pick flowers. That is incredible science for kindergarten, first, second graders. Okay. So I really, really, really want to give you that encouragement. And so looking up your state standards can actually be really helpful. I don't think you need to follow it to a T. If you have a kid who's a little bit behind in math, especially behind in reading, there are absolutely, for boys especially, it is absolutely normal to learn to read between 7 and 9. And yet we think if they're 5.5 and they're not reading yet, they're absolutely behind. So sometimes, yes, and most of the state standards won't say they have to be able to read this amount of words or anything like that. They're actually tend to be very, very loose. But looking those up, don't follow them to the letter of the law. I'm not fussed if I'm hitting the exact thing for third grade. But if you look them up, it really actually is very helpful to see what they're kind of doing in public school. Not that we should mimic that, but it helps you to just give a little bit more of like, okay, I can chill a little bit. Because I think we do tend to be like, what do they have to learn? Especially when we're new, you don't know. And it's really hard. Okay, last question. What do you do with littles during the school day? Okay, I already kind of hit on this, so I won't go long on this. But during the school day, they are coloring, they are playing magnet tiles, blocks. They are getting snacks. That's always good when you're like, hey, would you like a snack? They're participating with us. So right now we're doing Gather Round's unit study on dinosaurs, and they do have like a preschool book that you can print out. I buy the digital, so I have access to all of the grades. So I have printed out the preschool book for him. I am not expecting him to do it. I don't care if he fills it out. I'm not using it as preschool. I am giving him this book. Then he is so excited every time we do dinosaurs. He's like, I want to do mine. And he gets his book out and he's coloring on the dinosaurs. And he's happy to participate, and it's wonderful. And he will. He'll kind of trace the letters and, play with the colors. And I mean, that really is preschool. That's fantastic. He'll color. We'll get special crafts out sometimes that are not too messy for the little two to do on the table. I'll leave the back door open and they can kind of, because our backyard is fenced in, they'll kind of come in and out and play. When the big kids take breaks, they'll go outside and play with them. And there are absolutely days by the end of the school day, by the time we're getting ready for lunch, and I'm really feeling frazzled with a little too, I will put them in the other room and I will let them watch like a leapfrog video. And I know with millennial parents, the TV is extremely controversial and screen time is the devil and it's horrible and it's evil. I agree that too much screen time is not good. I completely agree. Your kid should not just be watching TV all day long, every single day, and turn into zombies. I also think that you have to do what you have to do to get through the day sometimes, and then watching a leapfrog video, those are my just favorite. They're very educational, but fun. Watching a leapfrog video for half an hour while you try to wrap up school and get lunch ready, it's also just not the end of the world. And I know so many moms who just feel like this immense amount of guilt that they can never let their littles, they can't let their 3-year-old ever watch a show. And then they're pulling their hair out and it's not good for anyone. And then you're screaming and they're screaming. And overall, it's just a big sin pile when they could just watch leapfrog for half an hour. So not everybody agrees with that, and that's completely fine. But we're 100% okay with that. They don't watch TV all during school every single day. But there's days when if they're really sick, we had both of them had colds recently, and they, you get to the point where they're like starting to get over the cold, and then the whininess, and then the crying, and you know what? For like 3 days, they did watch more TV than they normally do, and they're fine. And it's okay. So I'm gonna leave it there. All right. So those are the very random homeschool questions. From my limited experience, all I know is my kids and how we do things. And every season, I feel like you're like, okay, we're going to figure out what's working now. And so a lot of this is what's been working right now for us as we're kind of starting to have those older kids be more independent. Having the littles as well definitely makes it interesting. Also fun. Also interesting. And so, my encouragement to you is look for new systems, look for some ideas, look for a new chore chart, look for a different way to do something and try it out. Give it a try, tweak it then, find out what works well for you, because there is no one right way to do this. You just gotta jump in and try to figure it out. All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for joining in. Make sure you go check out our Joyful Home app. We actually have an entire, I think it's in there already. If it's not already in there, it will be very, very soon. We hosted an entire online homeschooling conference a few years ago with some really, really incredible homeschool mentors that taught all kinds of classes on homeschooling. It was amazing, from like practical to encouragement and inspirational sessions. It was amazing. So if it's not already in the app, it's going to be in the app in the next couple of weeks. And in the app, you get full access to that homeschool conference. We also have something called My Homeschooling Mentor, where we break down choosing curriculum, picking the right curriculum, getting started. We have advice from older homeschool moms who have graduated their kids from high school, all kinds of stuff. And that will be coming to the app very shortly as well as all of our other homemaking and audiobooks and all the other stuff there. So you can currently get 20% off. I don't remember what the coupon code is. So if you go to joyfulhomeapp.com, you can see the coupon code there, and then you can check out the website, download the app. It is awesome. joyfulhomeapp.com. All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with a non-homeschool related topic. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can really easily leave a comment down below. If you listen to one of these questions and you're like, oh, you know what? We do this that we really like. Please come share, because that's the best way for all of us to be able to learn from other homeschool moms. All right, ladies. Thank you so much for joining in, and I will see you guys back here next week for the next episode.